Hey everybody, Mr. M here, and today I want to talk to you about the amazing world of film editing. Um, but before I get into the nuts and bolts of editing and what that all means, and the role of the editor and what that editor does in terms of crafting the narrative of a film, a little history lesson. So we're going to go back in time. We're going back to the very beginning of cinema, basically, back to the days of George Méliès, if you remember, one of the early pioneers of filmmaking, along with the Lumiere brothers, who were responsible more for the kind of advent of documentary film, where George Méliès, the magician, the French magician, um, helped kind of usher in the era of narrative filmmaking. But what does he have to do with editing? Well, basically, he kind of helped. I won't say he's the father of editing, maybe one of the fathers of editing. But one day in the streets of Paris, he had set up his camera to record a bus going down the streets. Um, and due to a mechanical glitch while filming this bus going down the street, his camera jammed. It stopped when he went to go fix it and let it record again. The bus was gone, and another vehicle, a buggy, was going down the street. But when he played it back later in the day, it looked like the bus had vanished and then turned into the buggy. And it was this discovery of his that he would use as kind of to do special effects tricks within his movies to kind of change one person into another, something like that. But basically, what he had discovered was editing, or at least a form of editing. Specifically, in this case, he had stumbled upon the jump cut. And we know from reviewing the popular forms of cuts that we can use to put a film together. The jump cut is this kind of jarring switch, usually from location or in time, that is kind of noticeable. Either we jump from one place to another, in the case of George Méliès, one object to another, or we go from one time period to another time period. But it was that discovery of George Méliès that really kind of ushered in a new way of making movies. No longer was a filmmaker locked into just rolling the camera and letting the film run out, and that's all they could do. You could start and stop the camera to create different types of stories. Now, another famous director at the beginning of filmmaking, D.W. Griffith, is really considered the father of modern editing as we know it today, because he didn't use it so much as a trick like Méliès did, to have people turn into other objects or other people, but as a way of crafting a story. And that's how we use editing today, to tell stories. So with that out of the way, that little history lesson, let's talk about editing itself. What is it? What's the role of the editor? So again, editing, probably the most important aspect of the filmmaking process. Most people would argue that it is through the use of editing that the story is actually told, and that no film is completed until the editor and the director sit down together in the editing bay and put the movie together. They take all the filmed components, the visuals, the sound, the special effects, and bring those things together in a unique way to tell a story. Again, this is also known, editing also goes by terms such as cutting or splicing. The Soviets and the French actually refer to editing as montage, although for us in the States, montage means something else, not editing, but the superimposition of a variety of shots, one on top of another, usually to show the passage of time. So do make note of that. If we're talking about editing in the Russians or the French, they refer to it as montage, but that means something different to us here in the States, though. That's the basic definition of editing, this process of selecting, arranging, and assembling these different components, whether it be visuals, sound, special effects, together in a unique way to create a certain meaning. And that meaning creates the narrative of the story. The basic building block of film editing is the shot, and the shot has two values. The first value is what is within the shot itself, what we see. The second value is determined by how the shot is situated in relation to other shots. And this is one of three things that the editor is actually responsible for. A shot and its relationship to other shots. And this was very important for the Soviets, again, who call editing montage. And to kind of show you what I mean by this meaning that's created by the relationship of one shot to other shots, we turn to an early pioneer in Soviet filmmaking, a filmmaker by the name of Lev Kuleshov. And Kuleshov did this experiment, and I have this experiment pulled up here to the left of the screen. And in his experiment, he took three shots. The first and third shot are the same, the picture of a man. And what Kuleshov did was he would change out the shot in between the first and the third shot. So the second shot, he would change up. And depending on what he put in between shot one and shot three, a certain meaning was created. So in this first example here, our first shot is the shot of the man. In our third shot, same shot of the man. But in between those two shots, the second shot is a bowl of soup. And as part of his experiment, most people looking at this came to the conclusion that the man must be hungry. So from there, as part of his experiment, Kuleshov took out that second shot of the bowl of soup and replaced it with a new shot. And in this example, we have a shot of a young girl in a coffin. Again, shot one, shot three, same image of that man, but the meaning now has changed. No longer do we get people saying, oh, the man's hungry, as he was with the shot of the bowl of soup. But now the meaning has changed to people thinking that the man was sad, bereft with grief because of this new image of the young girl in the coffin. And in the third and final part of Kuleshov's experiment, he changes the second shot from the girl in the coffin to a young woman on a couch. And a lot of people took this to mean that the man was feelings of desire. So we see through his simple experiment of switching out one shot in between two other shots, that the meaning that the audience takes from that arrangement of shots changes quite drastically. all by doing something as simple as replacing one shot with another. And we get these different meanings.